I didn't expect it to happen like that. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some dramatic moment the world stopped for. It was just her name. Someone said it, softly, casually, like it meant nothing. But to me, it meant everything. Her name didn't just enter my ears, it entered my chest. And suddenly, my heart reacted before my mind could understand why. You ever hear a name and feel your entire past shift? Like all the mistakes, all the sleepless nights, all the silent prayers were quietly leading you to that sound? That's what happened to me. Her name shocked me. Not because it was loud, but because it was familiar, like my soul had been waiting for it long before I ever met her. In that moment, I realized something powerful. Sometimes love doesn't knock on your door. Sometimes it whispers your future through a single name. And tonight, I want to tell you why that name changed me, why it humbled me, and why it made me believe that love isn't something you chase. It's something that finds you when your heart is finally ready. Her name shocked me, not because it was rare, not because it sounded like poetry, not because the world paused and leaned in to listen. It shocked me because of what it did to me. I remember the moment clearly. I was standing there pretending to be composed, pretending that life had taught me enough to stay steady. I had mastered the art of calm silence. I had trained my face not to reveal too much. I had convinced myself that I understood love, that I knew its patterns, its tricks, its temporary highs and inevitable lows. And then someone said her name, softly, naturally, as if it were just another word in a sentence. But when it reached my ears, something inside me shifted. It was subtle, almost invisible, but powerful. My chest tightened, my breath slowed, my thoughts scattered like leaves caught in sudden wind. It felt like hearing a melody I had known in another lifetime. I wasn't prepared for that. I had heard thousands of names before, names that meant nothing, names that passed through me like air. But hers didn't pass through. It stayed. It echoed. It carved a space inside my ribs and refused to leave. I tried to act normal. I nodded. I kept my posture strong. But inside, I was unraveling in the quietest way. You see, sometimes a man believes he is strong because he has survived pain. He believes he is wise because he has endured disappointment. He thinks he is protected because he has built walls tall enough to block every storm. But love does not ask permission to enter. Her name felt like a key I didn't know existed, unlocking doors I had sealed years ago. Doors labeled, "Don't feel too much." Doors labeled, "Stay guarded." Doors labeled, "Never give everything again." And suddenly, those doors were opening. I asked myself why. Why would a simple sound affect me like that? Why would my heartbeat betray my carefully controlled rhythm? Why would my hands feel slightly colder, my voice slightly softer, my thoughts slightly slower? It scared me, not because I didn't want love, but because I did, and wanting something that deeply is dangerous. Her name carried warmth. It carried something steady, something grounding. It felt safe and terrifying at the same time. Music. Safe because it felt right. Terrifying because right things can change your entire direction. When I finally met her, when I saw the face behind the name, the shock deepened. It wasn't about beauty in the obvious sense. It wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. She had a presence that didn't demand attention, but commanded it anyway. She spoke softly, but her words felt deliberate. She smiled, and it wasn't dramatic, but it was honest. And when someone said her name again, this time in front of me, I watched her turn toward it. I watched how she responded to it. I watched how naturally it belonged to her. And I realized something. Her name didn't just shock me because of how it sounded. It shocked me because of how it felt attached to her soul. There are moments in a man's life when he understands that something is beginning, not loudly, not with fireworks, but quietly, deeply, like the first crack of light before sunrise. That was my moment. I went home that night and tried to ignore it. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself that I was too experienced to be moved by something so simple. But her name kept replaying in my mind. It became a whisper in my thoughts, a rhythm in my silence. I would be doing ordinary things, walking, working, sitting alone, and suddenly it would surface, her name, and every time it did, my heart responded the same way. Shock, softness, a strange sense of familiarity. It felt like I had known her long before I met her, like my soul recognized something my mind hadn't yet processed. And that recognition humbled me, because I realized I wasn't as closed off as I thought. I wasn't as healed as I claimed. I was still capable of being moved, and that realization alone changed me. Love, when it is real, doesn't arrive with noise, it arrives with awareness. It makes you aware of your own heart. It makes you aware of the parts of yourself you buried. It makes you aware of the fact that you still desire connection, even if you pretended you didn't. Her name shocked me because it exposed my truth. The truth that I wanted someone to see me beyond my strength. The truth that I was tired of pretending I didn't need warmth. The truth that behind every calm expression was a man who still believed in something pure. As I got to know her, the shock transformed into something deeper. It became respect, admiration, a quiet appreciation for the way she moved through the world. She wasn't loud. She didn't chase attention. She didn't try to impress anyone. She simply existed in her own rhythm. And somehow that rhythm aligned with mine. I started to notice small things. The way she listened, the way she paused before speaking, as if she cared about the weight of her words, the way she treated people with patience, even when they didn't deserve it. Her name no longer shocked me in the same way. It grounded me. It reminded me that love isn't always explosive. Sometimes it's steady. Sometimes it's calm. Sometimes it's just two souls recognizing each other in a crowded world. But the initial shock never completely disappeared, because every time I realized how deeply I was beginning to care, it startled me again. I would catch myself wondering how her day was going. I would find myself smiling at messages I used to consider ordinary. I would feel protective in ways I hadn't felt in years. And that vulnerability, that willingness to care, was the real shock. Love changes a man quietly. It softens the edges he sharpened to survive. It makes him patient where he used to be distant. It makes him brave in a different way. Not brave enough to fight the world, but brave enough to open his heart again. Her name became more than a sound. It became a reminder of who I was becoming. I was becoming gentler. I was becoming more intentional. I was becoming more aware of the power of words, actions, presence. Because when someone's name can move you that deeply, you start to understand the sacredness of connection. There were nights I would sit alone and think about how strange it was. How one ordinary day could turn into something meaningful simply because a name entered your life. And I would smile, not because everything was perfect, not because there were no fears, but because I had allowed myself to feel again. That is the true transformation. When a man stops running from his own emotions, when he stops hiding behind pride, when he admits that something or someone matters. Her name shocked me because it revealed that I was ready, ready to risk, ready to trust, ready to care without calculating the outcome. That doesn't mean I wasn't afraid. I was. I knew what love could do. I knew it could lift you higher than anything else. I also knew it could break you in ways that take years to rebuild. But when I weighed the fear against the feeling was stronger. And that strength wasn't loud, it was calm, steady, certain. I began to understand that sometimes the most powerful moments in life are not dramatic. They are subtle awakenings. They are quiet realizations that your heart is still alive. Her name was my awakening. It forced me to confront my own depth. It forced me to look at the man I was and the man I wanted to be. It made me ask questions I had avoided. Am I capable of loving fully? Am I capable of protecting someone's heart as carefully as my own? Am I strong enough to be soft? The answers didn't come immediately. They unfolded slowly through conversations, through shared silences, through small gestures that built trust. And every time someone said her name in my presence, I felt a quiet gratitude. Gratitude that I had heard it. Gratitude that it had reached me at the right time. Gratitude that my heart had not been completely closed. Love is not always about grand declarations. Sometimes it begins with shock. A gentle, unexpected shock that reminds you that you are human, that you can still feel deeply, that you can still care without armor, that you can still be moved by something as simple as a name. If I am honest, her name didn't just shock me. It healed me in places I didn't know were wounded. It reminded me that beneath every disappointment, there is still hope. Beneath every scar, there is still sensitivity. Beneath every guarded expression, there is still a man capable of devotion. And devotion is not weakness, it is strength refined by humility. When I say her name now, I say it with awareness. I say it with respect for what it awakened in me. I say it knowing that it represents more than a person. It represents the moment I chose not to run from love. There are people who will enter your life loudly. They will demand attention. They will shake your world in obvious ways. But the ones who truly change you often arrive quietly. They arrive as a name in a conversation, a whisper in a crowded room, a gentle shift in your heartbeat. Her name shocked me because it didn't ask for permission to matter. It simply did. And in that shock, I found clarity. Clarity that love is not something you force. Clarity that when it is real, it feels both peaceful and powerful. Clarity that the right person doesn't make you feel chaotic. They make you feel aware, aware of your own depth, aware of your own capacity, aware that your heart, no matter how careful it has become, still longs to give. Her name shocked me, and in that shock, I met a version of myself I had almost forgotten. A man who believes, a man who feels, a man who is not ashamed of loving deeply. And every time I hear it now, I don't flinch. I breathe. I remember that moment. I remember how it began with a simple sound that changed everything inside me, how it traveled through silence, how it made me realize that sometimes destiny doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you are quiet enough, if you are open enough, you will hear it calling you by the one name that was always meant to awaken your heart and make you step forward instead of standing still, make you risk instead of retreat, make you love instead of pretending you don't need it. And that is why her name will always carry that first shock within it, that sacred surprise that reminded me I was alive and capable of something deeper than fear, something stronger than pride, something softer than I ever allowed myself to be before I heard it spoken into the air and felt my entire world shift in the most gentle, undeniable way. How love changes a man before he understands it. I used to believe that change had to be intentional. I believed a man wakes up one morning, looks at his reflection, and decides to be different, stronger, kinder, more patient. I thought growth was a decision made in silence, shaped by discipline, sharpened by solitude. I was wrong. Sometimes a man changes long before he realizes he is changing. Sometimes love begins its work quietly, without announcement, without permission. It doesn't knock on the door of your heart and wait for approval. It walks in gently, rearranges the furniture of your soul, and by the time you notice, nothing inside you is where it used to be. When she entered my life, I didn't declare anything. I didn't make promises to myself. I didn't say, "This is the moment I become better." I simply met her, and something in me began to shift. At first, it was almost invisible. I started listening more carefully, not just to her, but to everyone, as if loving her required me to become more aware of the